Hello there! Jamstack is becoming more and more popular each day, so I decided to give it a go with one of my favorite technologies around the world, which are Nuxt.js and Storyblok. So in this presentation, I will give you a little bit of a guide around both Nuxt and Storyblok in a world of Jamstack. My name is Jakub and I am a senior developer and developer advocate at Vue Storefront. I'm also an ambassador in Nuxt, Storyblok and Algolia, and I'm pretty certain you know why. In terms of the developer advocacy and the interesting story, my girlfriend created this emoticon, this image for me when I told her that I'm doing a role of the developer advocate, which sometimes developer advocates use the avocado emoji instead of the advocate in the job position. So she created this for me. So if you'd like to reach me on Twitter, this is my Twitter handle at Jakub Andrzejewski. If you don't know what Vue Storefront is, it is basically a front-end platform for headless and composable e-commerce. So basically, if you are looking for a tool that would help you build a modern e-commerce website with Vue.js, Nuxt.js, Vue Storefront is a good place to start. So let's start with what is Jamstack. So by the official definition by the Jamstack org, Jamstack is the architecture approach that decouples the web experience layer from data and business logic. And thanks to that, we have the improved flexibility, scalability, performance, and maintainability. So this is very official definition. I prefer to look at the technology and see what's inside. So what is Jam? Because stack is like, for example, the technology stack or the tools stack. So what is Jam? Because probably it's an acronym from some tools or technologies. So Jam stands for JavaScript, API, and the markup. So in JavaScript, we have JavaScript frameworks like Vue, React, or Angular. In API, we have things like Prismic, which is, for example, a CMS. We have Stripe, which is a payment gateway, Google Analytics. So in general, this layer where we have the business logic. So we have the front end, we have the business logic. And then we have the markup. So the markup, I mean like the Markdown, for example, the extension where we can just simply write websites in Markdown that are then transferred to HTML. So let's quickly take a look at the Jamstack org to see what it has inside. So we see this definition that I gave you as well, but what I wanted to show you here is that inside generators, when we take a look at all of the available ones, in here we can see Nuxt, so one of the technologies that we will be using today. And the second step is to go to headless CMSs, and in here we will search for Storyblok, which is also part of the Jamstack technology. Let's go back to the presentation. And so what is Nuxt? Nuxt.js is a framework, like a hybrid framework for Vue.js, which allows you to build SSR, so the server-side rendered applications, statically generated websites, hybrid applications. Basically, if you want to build let's say more advanced applications in Vue.js, I would recommend you to go with Nuxt. So we will be using Nuxt for our today's presentation. So what is Storyblok? Our second part of the presentation. So Storyblok is a headless CMS, which means that it's a content management system that is completely detached from your website. You can connect it via API and just fetch the data and populate your website with the data from Storyblok. And it's really nice because you can have any kind of frontend. You can have a React, Next.js, Vue, Nuxt.js, Angular, whatever framework you prefer on the frontend. And you will be just able to fetch the data from Storyblok. So you are not like vendor locked. And Storyblok also allows you to work on the content with a team. So for example, if you know Figma, like the design tool, and how you can work on Figma designs with your team, in Storyblok right now, with the second version of Storyblok, you can do something similar. So the technology stack for our demo part, because the presentation will be divided into this, like the theory part and then the practical one with the demo. I will be using Nuxt, as I explained previously, Nuxt 3 especially. I will be using Tailwind for styling, but very simple styling. Don't expect a very advanced, like mobile-friendly application from this presentation. I'll be just using it to make it a bit more nice to see for the eye. It won't be like one of those beautiful portfolio websites. I'll be using the Nuxt content, which is the module that allows you to write your pages and components with the Markdown extension. And I will be using also the Storyblok Nuxt, which is the module for that allows you to integrate Storyblok into your Nuxt 3 application. And finally, with all our application, what we will do, we will just deploy it to Vercel, just to see how it works in the production environment. So in our case, this Jamstack, so the JavaScript API markup, will look, let's say, something like this. In the JavaScript part, we will have the Vue.js, especially Vue 3. In the API part, we will have the Storyblok. So we will fetch some stories and some content from the CMS. And in the markup, we will have Nuxt.js. So what we will be building today? We will be building something like this. So as I mentioned, it won't be beautiful, but I am the guy who prefers how website works than how website looks. So in this like demo part where I'll be showing how this works, I'll be focusing mainly on the functionality. So in the first section of the page, where we see these cuts from Markdown, we will be building a Vue.js components, and we'll be then using these Vue.js components in the Markdown file. In the second section, where we have these cuts from Storyblok, we will have also Vue.js component, but it will fetch the data from the Storyblok so that we can add the data later very easily from the headless CMS. I already installed some of the dependencies and created a project. So it's npx nuxt init and the name of our project. It will generate for us the simple Nuxt 3 application. And then, as I said, I also installed some dependencies. So we have the module for Tailwind and the module for content, which will be like the developer dependencies. And then the Storyblok and the Axios. And notice that I'm using quite old version of Axios. It's because Axios recently released a new version, which is like 1.3 or something. And there were several breaking changes. And the Storyblok Nuxt uses the old version of Axios. But it will work anyway. So just make sure that you are using this kind of version of Axios. Otherwise, you might have some bugs and issues on the page. Okay, so right now let's go to coding time. Just before we go to the code, let's quickly go to the Storyblok to see what I already prepared for the presentation. So I have already created a space, which is relatively simple to do. In Storyblok, it's like few clicks. And I have created a simple content page, which is called the home. And this home will be quite crucial for the next part of the presentation for our Storyblok integration to work correctly. Apart from that, let's quickly just go here. We see that we have in the body of this home page, we see three components, three blocks, which are called cat image. If we go to the block library here, we see that we have this block created, this cat image, and it's a very simple one. It only contains like the title, which is text, ID, which is text as well, and the src, which will be src for our image, and it will be an asset. And these assets are stored here. So we have all these images of cats in our assets library. That's why when we go to the content and the home, in here, for example, we will have this source of the cat. And if we go to a different one, like this one here, we will have another picture of a cat and another title as well. So right now, let's go to the code and see what we have here. This is how the default structure of Nuxt application looks like. We have the nuxt-config.ts file, which is like the main configuration file for Nuxt. We have the app view, which is like the main component or main page, like the whole wrapper or around our application, Nuxt application. And in here, we just see the simple Nuxt welcome component. I will show it in a second how it looks like in the browser. In the package.json here, we have some scripts already defined for us. And in the dev dependencies, we have the Nuxt content, Nuxt Tailwind CSS, and in the normal dependencies, we have Storyblok and the Axios as well. So what we'll do right now is we will just simply run the server and see if it works. So yarn dev. So let's go to the browser and refresh the page. So this is this Nuxt welcome. So it says to us, okay, you have created a Nuxt free application. You have some documentation here that you can check if you like to learn more about Nuxt. Let's now stop the server and start to add some configuration because we have 3 modules that we added to or installed in our project: Tailwind CSS, content, and the Storyblok. So let's add all of them here. I will copy some code because it will be easier for me to explain rather than writing all of it from scratch. So how we register modules in the nuxt-config.ts. It's really straightforward. We only need to define the modules property in our nuxt-config.ts, which is an array, and pass the name of the module we want to register. In our case, Nuxt content, Nuxt Tailwind CSS, and the Storyblok Nuxt. As you can see, the third option here, the module for Storyblok, looks a bit different because this one, apart from just registering the name of the module, we are also passing some configuration here. These modules also accept some configuration, but in our case, like the default example, we don't need any configuration at all, just the name of the module. In here, I have created the access token property in the configuration object, and I pass the process.env.storyblok access token. So what I will do right now is I will just quickly create the .env file and create this Storyblok access token. And I will get this token from the Storyblok website. So let me go quickly there and show you where it is. In the settings here and in the access tokens, in here you have the token we will use for our presentation. Let's copy it and paste it here. So what next? As the first example, what we could do here, I would recommend to just see if some of our modules work. So for example, let's try if the Nuxt content works as expected. So in order to test it, we will create a content folder, and in this content folder, we'll create index.md file. And just as a test, let's add here a testing Nuxt content. And just below that, let's say something in italics. So hello from Nuxt content. Just like this. In order to make it work, because right now it won't work because in here we have the Nuxt welcome component that will be displayed instead of our content. What we need to do is to add in here the component that was auto-imported for us from the Nuxt content, which is called content doc. And as an attribute, we'll pass the path, and the path will be just a simple slash, because we'll be like a homepage index. And we'll also add it a class of prose and text left. And let's just close it. Let's save it and let's try if it works. We see already some logs from the modules. For example, in here we have the information that the Tailwind module was installed. We have the information that the Storyblok module was installed as well. So let's see in the browser how it looks like. So as you can see here, we have the testing Nuxt content and hello from Nuxt content, which is basically the content from our index.md file, which is nice. We are now ready, or we know right now that the module is working as expected. So what next? Let's go to the components creation, because as I said, we will be using Vue.js, and let's create an cat image component. So I will create a components folder, and inside this components folder, I will create another folder called content. This is like the default structure of building components for your content application. And in here, I will create image, cat image .view, which will be our component. I will copy some code here and just explain step by step what is going on here. So in the template section, which is like the HTML part of our component, we have some stuff. We have the div, which is like the wrapper around our cat image component. In P, we have the title, which will be a prop. I will explain it in a second. Then we have another wrapper, div wrapper, and inside we have the image. And this image will have the alt, which will be the same as the title above, and we will have the src. And we also have some very simple styling from Tailwind as well. So we will have two props. This component will accept two props that we will be able to customize it. So we could have like 10 cat images, but all of them will be different because of the data that will be passed to them. So we will have an src, which will be a type of string, and we will also have the title. So we will pass the title from the parent component that will be displayed both here and as the alt of the image, and the src, which will be the actual src of our image. So that's basically it. Let's use it right now in our MD file, because right here we only have like classic markdown content. But because we are using the Nuxt content, this module developed for Nuxt, we can also import components like Vue.js components inside of this markdown file. And how we'll do that? Basically, the syntax looks like this. So we have the colon and then name of the Vue component, but not like the uppercase, the naming convention I used, the lowercase, and between all like words, we have the dash. So we will have cat image. We can test it right now. It probably will fail because it won't have the required props, as we can see in the log here, missing required prop src and the title. So let's just pass the props here. When passing props in components in markdown file, what we need to do is to open up these curly braces and add the name of the prop that we want to send. So it's a bit different than the usual like Vue part, Vue approach, because in Vue we are using like the components in the template, and then we are passing the props as a, for example, colon and the name of the prop. In here it's a bit different. So let's use this prop here. So src, and the src will be just, let's say, the first image from our Storyblok right here. And we'll also pass the title because both props are required. And how we do that? In Markdown, we do this by just separating each properties with a space. So right here, the second one will be title. And let's say, as this will be like the sentence, not a single word, we will use the this sign, and then we will say my favorite cat from Markdown. Let's say something like this. So let's see how it looks like in the browser. So we see the cat here, the image, and we see the text, my favorite cat from Markdown. So this is already pretty nice because we created a Vue.js component and we used it in the Markdown file by passing a prop. So it's not static, we can create new cats, we can create new images by this, and just, for example, change the title to something else. Second favorite cat. And as you can see, it works. We can have dynamic content in the Markdown file by using Vue.js components. So we have my favorite cat from Markdown and the second favorite cat, and both of them have the image. The image is the same because I haven't changed the src. So this is like the first step. We have the Markdown file, like index.md. We have some classic Markdown content. We have some Vue.js components with the props. So what next is I will try to connect Storyblok to this application. So I will stop the server and I will create a new component here called cat, but not in components, in components content. Cat image gallery.view. And what this component will do is it will fetch the data from Storyblok about our cats. So it will use the cat image, but in a classical Vue way. I will also copy some code and explain each line in a second. Cat image gallery right here. So let's inspect the code. We have the section with the very simple Tailwind styling. We have the div wrapper, another div wrapper, and the cat image. And in here we are looping, like creating several cat image components based on the story.content.body. And this data, dynamic data, will be fetched from Storyblok like this. But I will explain it in a second. In here, we are also passing the key because we are creating multiple components based on some array. So you need to pass the key as well, so that it will be easy to differentiate between different components. We pass the title, which will be image.title, and we pass the src, which will be image, src, and file name. This is like the structure of the image asset in Storyblok. So it's src and the file name. In here, in the script section, so the logic of our component, we have the variable story, which has a value of await use async Storyblok. This use async Storyblok is a composable, Vue.js composable from the Storyblok Nuxt module, and it is automatically imported for you, auto-imported, so you don't need to do import a use async Storyblok from Storyblok Nuxt. It is automatically handled for you. So what it will do under the hood, it will fetch the data from the Storyblok, from your content page, from your dashboard, and then you will have access to it in your application. So in order to make it work, we need to pass here first the name of the content page we want to fetch. And this is why I mentioned in the when I was explaining the Storyblok part, that the content page I created was called home. So this is the home here. You have to remember that to have the same naming, otherwise you won't be able to fetch this certain data. And we also sent an object here called version, and we set its value to draft. Okay, this story here, as I mentioned, is used in here, and we are getting the body. So the body from the response from Storyblok, and this body will have the data about our cats. In the Storyblok dashboard, in the Storyblok content page, I showed you that we already have 3 cats with different images and different titles. So they will all be in here, and they will have the ID, and they will have the title, and they will have the src and the file name as well. So this should work. And I said should because it won't, basically, because we won't be able to see like the live preview on Storyblok, and I will show you why. Because right here, what will happen is I will start the server, and in our application, when we reload it, we also, I forgot, we also have to import this cat image gallery in our index.md to make it work and see it in the browser. So we will just say cat image and gallery. Let's save it. So right now we see these cats already, but we won't be able to see like the live preview in Storyblok, because when we go here and our content and home, we will see that HTTP is not allowed. This is because in the second version of Storyblok, they added this security recommendation that in order to make this preview work, you have to have your application running in HTTPS, which is a good recommendation in general. And based on the instructions you have here, it's basically like 2 maximal 3 steps to do. So what we will need to do is we need to install this mkcert, which will create like a dummy certificate for our local host, and I will do it right now. So, but I will open another tab as well in my terminal here. So I will create this certificate, and it will be here and here. We have like the certificate key and the PEM. And next step is to create a proxy. This proxy will be proxying our HTTP, like the one working on the port 3000, into 3010 with HTTPS. And we will just copy the code from here. You also need to install this local SSL proxy and the mkcert if you don't have it. So in here, I have the application running on port 3000 here. So I will copy the code here. So local SSL proxy, the source will be 3010 and the target will be 3000. Okay, so the address seems to be in use. Okay, so the address seems to be in use, but no worries, we can just change it to something else instead, like 3011. Because there's something probably running on this port already. So let's 3011. And right now in here, we have the change URL, and we can add or change preview URLs. Let's go here. And in here, we can just say HTTPS and 3011. Let's save it. Let's go to content and the home. And right now we see the preview. So we already have the our website inside of Storyblok. And why I wanted to make it work, because as you can see here, we already are fetching content from Storyblok, which is really nice. But in here, while we have access to this Storyblok content page and the preview, what we could do is we can add and modify content on the go. So let's just copy the last cat image and just paste it below. And we see the live update. It won't be updating here yet. We will just have the 3 cats because this is like the draft. We are just trying things out, seeing how they work. If we want to make them work in our application here, what we need to do is to just go save and publish. And when we publish it and then refresh our page, what will happen is that we'll have this another cat here. We can also do much more. We can copy the first cat and just add it here. Save it, publish, and see it in our browser. So this is really, really nice. Also, the images of the cats are really nice. I selected them specifically because I like them. Okay, so what next? I think that's all in terms of what I have prepared for you in this presentation. So I will just do a quick summary, and then we'll go to deploying our app in Vercel. So let's go to the code. Let's close this for now. What we have done here, we have created a markdown file where we have markdown content, we have the view dynamic content like Vue.js, and in here, in this cut image gallery, we have view component that is fetching data directly from Storyblok, just like this. What we need to do now, like the final step, is just to push this code to my GitHub repository and then just log in to Vercel and just deploy it. So I will just close this for now because it won't be needed anymore. I will add this local hosts certificates in my .gitignore so that they won't be pushed to the GitHub repository. And so they are all like great, so they won't be pushed. So we have only gitignore, app, Nuxt config, cut image gallery, and index.md. So let's just add all of them and say feature working app and just commit and push it. Okay, so it's already pushed to the GitHub repository. What we can do right now is just to go to Vercel dashboard and add a new project. I will use GitHub and I will choose this project that I just pushed here. Let's import it. In here, I'm just using the default name that is the same name as my GitHub repository. Vercel already created a preset for me for Nuxt.js, so based on the project I'm using, Vercel already managed to figure it out and just add some default configuration on their side. In here, I can also add some like build and output settings, but for me, it's not necessary for this demo. What I need to do is to create environment variables, because as you remember in the code here, in the .env, we have created this Storyblok access token, which is then used in here. So we need to add something similar for Vercel in order to make it work. So we will copy the name of this environment variable from here and we will add it here as a name. And finally, in here, we'll just copy the value of the Storyblok access token and add it here. And this will be encrypted by Vercel, so it won't be that easy to get the data of or the value of my access token. So right now, what we'll do is just click deploy, and see what it does for us. So it will start building the project. So in the meantime, just to not waste time on waiting for the deployment to finish, I would just mention that in here, I created this full repository. You can check it out. It is already deployed to Vercel as well in a different domain. But you can check it out. You can scan the code. If you like, you can copy some of them. No worries. Yeah, so let's wait a few seconds because deployment usually takes about 1 minute, maybe less. And we'll have the deployed and production ready application. Okay, so the deployment was done. We have the congratulations from the Vercel. We have some confetti. We can just right now see how our website looks like in production environment. Let's click it. And we see the content from Nuxt content. We have the images from Vue component, and we also have the cuts from Storyblok, the ones that were fetched dynamically from the headless CMS. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. As I mentioned, you have the link to the GitHub repository. In there will be also a link to this deployed instance of this project, so you can check it out if you like to try it out for yourself. Basically, that will be it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention and for being with me here for this journey on trying Jamstack with Storyblok and Nuxt. If you'd like to reach me, you can of course use the Twitter, which is the Jakub Andrzejewski. I also have a blog at Dev2 where I'm posting weekly posts about Nuxt, about security, about Vue.js and Nest.js as well. So if you are interested in these topics, make sure to check it out. I also have a YouTube channel where I'm also Jakub Andrzejewski, where I'm creating content very similar to this one you're watching right now. And of course, in GitHub, this is the only different name I have, so it's Barosian, and you can check it out as well. Thanks very much, and see you next time.